Hello and welcome back. I'm very excited to welcome our next speaker. I hope everybody could hear me. I'm very excited to welcome our next speaker, Wulf Kaal. Thank you all and welcome back. He's the CEO of Menagerie. Menagerie is a community management system where you can build clubs, corporations, DAOs, and nonprofits for the decentralized world of Web3. Wulf is a community builder, an entrepreneur, a technologist, an author, a public speaker, and an expert at the intersection of law, business, technology, with a focus on emerging technology applications in a broad array of industries, decentralized infrastructure, digital asset, DAOs, NFTs, and smart contracting, as well as private investment and fund regulation and compliance. So his talk today, he'll be presenting the Menagerie Platform, Decentralization as a Process. So welcome very much, Wulf. Glad to have you here today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks, Haley, for this kind introduction. Okay, so thanks for having me again. So I'll be speaking about Menagerie. I also will give you a quick overview of where I'm coming from as an academic in this. So here's a quick overview of what I want to talk about. So I've been in this PhD trained economist and law professor for about over 10 years now, with with 2 books, over 100 academic articles. And this is really what most of my scholarship is about, and the scholarship really has been translated into Menagerie, because I started realizing that it's one thing to write about these theoretical concepts, but it's a completely different thing to write about things that can only evolve in practice. And so Menagerie is the practical instantiation of over 10 years of research, including mathematical models. So to give you a quick overview, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the scholarship and how the scholarship is relevant, and how it connects to other things and other scholarship that has been driving economics and economics theory. After that, I'll talk a little bit about some of the problems that we see in practice that come out of these theoretical concepts. And this is really the sort of the key target field, if you want, for Menagerie. And then based on that feedback on the problems that we've seen in decentralized governance, I'll talk about how Menagerie tackles this, and which is again based on the scholarship. And we'll give you a quick overview of products and services, and also we'll talk a little bit about our work with some of the preeminent platforms in Silicon Valley under traction, and then we'll give a quick overview on roadmap at the end. Again, if anyone wants to jump in with questions throughout, I actually think it's more dynamic. I've written a lot about dynamic engagement, so the more questions, the better. But other than that, I'll be just walking through this. Please feel free to interrupt with any questions for clarification, etc., whenever required. Okay, so let me start out with an overview of scholarship. So most, if not all, economists have dealt with some form of Ronald Coase, the firm, in their practice, or at least know about it, right? So what is the biggest articles here: nature of the firm and the problem of social cost, the issue of transaction costs, and how transaction costs minimization necessitates creating corporate and other entities to optimize transaction cost minimization in contracting, right? So this is Ronald Coase, Nobel laureate, and then as of 1937, right? So it's almost 100 years now, and this has been driving economic theory for the past 100 years, right? And then we see new institutional economics, which is how I was trained, coming in the 70s and 80s with Elinor Ostrom, Oliver Williamson, and Douglas North in '93, really chipping away, if you want, at some of the assumptions in neoclassical economics and in the theory of the firm, and expanding the logic of the theory of the firm, including with some of the basic assumptions on rationality and introducing the concept of bounded rationality and transaction cost, opportunity cost, among many others, other items that new institutional economics have added to this since the 70s. My PhD supervisor was Christian Kirchner. He, together with Eriki Furubotten and Rudolf Richter, they have really extended this theory in new institutional economics and applied it to different industries, especially Christian Kirchner in the context of antitrust, among others, very prominent there. And so I've been trained by Christian. I wrote his Festschrift, which is a over 1,400-page Festschrift dedicated to his work and legacy. And in that context, I wrote an article some 10 years ago on dynamic regulation in the new institutional economics framework. And that really was the kickoff to a lot of the practical instantiation of dynamic regulatory concepts in decentralized autonomous organizations, right? And this is ultimately an extension of that is graph theory, weighted direct acyclical graphs. And then Craig Calcaterra, who's a math professor, PhD in mathematics, expert in dynamical systems and math, he and I rewrote this book 4 years ago about decentralization and the how to implement some of the new institutional economics theory that I wrote about in a dynamical context, a dynamical regulatory context, that is. And based on this work and the sequence of work, we're now dealing with real-world instantiation and DAO implementation with code of these theoretical concepts. So that's just, sorry, it's long background, but that's where this theory and practice combination comes from. Yeah. So the extension going forward in my personal scholarship is all about explaining the practical issues in applying the theory and understanding how the theory and practice go lockstep forward, right? So I'm writing another book right now about the experience here, and Menagerie is really the tool set that allows me to continue with this research based on practical instantiation and the coded implementation and the issues that we identify in this context. Okay, so having said that, there are a lot of extensions, if you want, from this coercive theory of the firm. So to take a step back, right? If we look at transactions and transaction cost intermediaries, the whole logic in COES that focuses on transaction cost minimization as the foundation of the firm is extended through cryptocurrency, right? So cryptocurrency and smart contracting really are currently, in my view at least, the epitome of transaction cost minimization, because we're standardizing things that were in contracts that we couldn't standardize in the past. And so cryptocurrency is really at the forefront of that, but together with smart contracting. And then smart contracts, the extension of smart contracts are decentralized autonomous organizations. These three components of cryptocurrency, so crowdsourcing, cryptocurrency, smart contracting, and then the extension of smart contracting in decentralized autonomous organizations, they're really the extension of the theory of the firm and the transaction cost minimization that COES talked about. Now, having said that, there are many other issues that are being introduced by this. Among them, of course, the issue with bugs and new logic that we're introducing. Smart contracts by themselves, without proper governance, actually introduce incentives, perverse incentives, that if you want to offset the transaction cost minimization, right? So if we don't add layers of decentralized governance to all of these optimizations for the firm, they may not pan out the way they were intended to, right? And that's where Menagerie really is coming from. So Bitcoin, everybody talks about this. This is a very old slide, but it still rings true today. Bitcoin has been leveling the playing field and plowing the field really for all of it, including with the emergence of stable cryptocurrencies, all these things that followed in the wake of Bitcoin were part of the path, if you want, towards decentralized governance solutions that can upgrade all of these transaction cost minimization tool sets that we are now seeing, right? So in the future, we'll see revolution in economics and organizations. And at Menagerie, we really believe, and based on 10 years of research, that this can only truly happen with decentralized governance at the core. And of course, there are many conversations about this. What is decentralized governance? How does it work? And I'll walk through that in a little bit in more detail. So one thing that we see in the market today, which is in many ways problematic because it creates a waste of resource. We see a lot of projects trying to reinvent the wheel with their own idea on best practices on governance, right? There's a heavy redundant lift that we believe should be done by no more than 3 platforms ultimately, right? So right now we have situations in which many clients and people who launch cryptocurrencies, they need to deal with governance solutions. And often what happens is we see talented people getting together and combining old concepts without really looking at the universality of what they would need to create, right? So it's a very typical engineering concept to combine existing frameworks and create new solutions based on that, without truly thinking about the universality of what they're creating and all the issues that can come out of that. So what we've seen is that, for instance, a lot of the layer ones that are currently very popular and who are among clients for Menagerie, they have 5-7 years ago hard-coded in many cases governance solutions, right? And without looking at the different elements that couldn't be anticipated, right? So at the time it sounded reasonable, but now we're seeing a lot of these problems resurface, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So one of the things that are important to understand is that the ecosystem right now experiences a lot of waste that comes out of systems and platforms trying to reinvent the wheel on governance, right? So these investments of time and money, in many ways, detract from the actual project mission, and they shouldn't have to do that, right? So if there were 3 solutions for governance that projects could select from that are true governance, not existing solutions with centralized governance, then we would see a lot of these projects very likely proliferate with their mission, right? Without having to dive themselves into governance solutions, right? So as we were building this, a lot of these projects, what we see is this split between pure and hybrid, right? So do you want to create decentralized solutions for community governance as a goal in itself, which we at Menagerie believe it is a goal in itself because it dictates all of the long-term outputs that the community can generate. So governance is not a bug. It's not something you slap on at the end. It's the cause itself for us, right? But obviously, there's different communities that need governance, but that don't look at governance as the core of their mission, and they benefit from having ready-made governance solutions available. And so what we see is this combination of purist perspectives on governance versus hybrids, right? And the more you compromise on the decentralization in governance, often what we see is the more you compromise the longevity of projects. And we've seen this in all the crypto winters so far. Most projects that survive had some form of solution on the governance side and or had the right investment strategy and long-term and created long-term decentralized infrastructure products, and most of them ultimately run into governance problems. And so then we have also this top-down versus bottom-up approach, of course, where we see legal wrappers being used in new generations of decentralized autonomous organizations, and where the legal wrapper really becomes the end-all to the community, right? That's, if you want, the reintroduction of centralized elements into decentralized solutions, versus in a bottom-up environment where the legal wrapper really takes order from the decentralized governance that comes out of the community, which is the Menagerie model, by the way. Yeah, and we just don't see that right now in a lot of communities successfully implemented. Yeah, and again, coming out of this reinvention of the wheel with their own ideas of best practices. Yeah. And so, okay, so let me just talk just briefly about some of the governance challenges, and then I'll introduce Menagerie as one possible solution. So, a lot of the governance challenges right now in the ecosystem can be, if you want, summarized. There are many more, but it typically revolves around tyranny of the majority. So people staking and having to think about how are other people staking and voting in order to avoid having to losing their stakes and their tokens. Yeah. And in all the projects where you use fungible tokens, that is a key problem. Yeah, where people worry about, what does my vote count? And because we know we have these whales with fungible tokens that can purchase these tokens on exchanges. And because of these fungible token problems, a lot of people stop engaging, right? So there's a real problem in many DAOs that where we see one, attrition, and simply lack of engagement. Yeah? So it's typically associated with fungible tokens and tyranny of the majority issues that come out of that, right? And the overwhelming majority of projects out there that run decentralized governance typically have some component of that. Menagerie is actually writing right now a meta-analysis of the market where we literally code every single project in our data set based on governance metrics, right? And we will make that available in about 2 months. A lot of work went into that, took us over 6 months with a team of 25 people, just analyzing and showing where the market right is in terms of governance and the challenges that most of these projects experience. And then same with scalability issues, right? So transactions per seconds, gas fees, any layer one and anyone building projects on layer ones deals with these issues, right? And this has been for the last 10 years, really, where certain solutions, layer two projects, Polygon among others, are becoming extremely successful because they're tackling these issues, right? So for Menagerie and Menagerie clients, it's often about how do you create batching solutions to avoid having to upload all of the respective community engagements and voting engagements and staking engagements onto the blockchain. A lot of these blockchains simply couldn't possibly handle the amount of transactions that come out of this type of engagement. That depends a little bit on how you calibrate it and how you set this up. But that directly relates also to interoperability barriers, because many clients actually do not want to commit to a particular layer one. And we see a lot of these silos right now with some of the very, very prominent layer ones competing with each other without necessarily thinking about multi-chain solutions. And ultimately, this ecosystem can only truly grow with multi-chain solutions, right? So this idea of layer ones competing with each other long-term, in many ways seems silly, but that's currently the status of affairs, if you want, right? And then, of course, security risks in governance. That's really where my scholarship came from 10 years ago. I really wasn't interested in building something that could be Sybil attacked, and so the entire logic of what I've been doing for the last 10 years has come out of a recognition that attack-resistant systems, that's the front and center, yeah, of what we do. And yeah, so that's a lot of systems can scale, and once they start scaling, they will experience many more attacks that they hadn't actually talked about or thought about. And so that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, to create systems and solutions that actually are attack resistant even when systems scale, right? Okay, so one very big ticket item for problems in governance is, and we see this with many clients that who want to set up, quote, set up and not let evolve communities, right? So we've seen many products and IP ownership that where Web2 technologies, Facebook among others, Reddit, have created literally millions, hundreds of millions of revenue for themselves out of existing IP products where people build communities around these products. But these communities on these platforms evolved naturally, right? So when you start talking about top-down incentivized communities, it typically doesn't work, right? We see common reasons, typically a lack of authenticity, but people just pick up on it and they don't feel included, and there is no natural tie-in, right? And then the misalignment of incentives, failure to recruit, motivations, all of these problems then kick back in, right? And so that's very important for Menagerie and Menagerie clients to be cognizant of this if and when they start community building. So let me just wrap up on some of the challenges that we are seeing for DAOs. So governance and incentive failures, I talked about this earlier. It's rampant. People, different projects sort of reinventing the wheel, setting up their own governance structures without truly understanding the universality of what all the issues that can come up on and come out of this. Foundational flaws, typically catalyst identification. So who gets to run and start a community under what terms? Yeah. What we see often is people who run communities, they back into existing centralized logic with committees that run things and foundations that have boards. And guess who's on the board? The whales, right? The whales on the board. Those are typically non-starters in terms of governance, long-term governance logic. And we see a lot of projects struggling with that. And then from that, of course, if you use this logic, this foundationally flawed logic, you often end up with poor engagement from the community, right? Because why would you engage if you know that the whales can outvote you with one person, one vote, or by the amount of tokens that are available in a given community, right? So why would people engage? And that's exactly the type of thing that Menagerie is addressing. And of course, we've seen 2018 and of course last year and before, rug pulls and key man risk are rampant. We see this all the time. Who controls the code? Who controls the wallet? How are the wallets operated, et cetera, right? And underlying for this is really this flawed concept of decentralization, lack of disclosure, and securities failures. Again, I'm happy to take questions. I keep talking. I hope there may be some questions.
No, this is wonderful. I keep coming up with questions I want to ask, but I assume you'll get to it because you must be telling me what the answer to all these important questions are going to be. I do want to talk just a little bit about we all see this, and there's the temptation for, even like I said, in the last talk, the centralized governments to try and protect us from crypto, right? There's rug pulls, so therefore nobody can invest in ICOs, and but the blockchain space has really demonstrated that people really are capable of doing their own research, but that research is not easy to do on these projects necessarily. You can sense an insincerity, but it's not always possible. It's not always easy. It's not always easy to find out, even if a community is still even active, much less genuine. Yeah. How do you look at? I know you're going to address all of this, but can you speak a little bit to that for just a second, in these challenges for DAOs and why these challenges come up so consistently and look so unaddressable for projects?
Yeah. So why do these come up? Look, projects don't hire governance experts typically, and if they hire a governance expert, they typically hire what they know, right? And what they know, and this is this problem, and I'm writing a book about this right now, of re-centralization, right? So you don't know how to decentralize and how to make it long-term successful, but you want to do something right now. So what do you go back to? You go back to what you know, what you think you understand, right? And what other governance expert may be selling you, right? And you're going back to foundations and committees and one person, one vote, and staking fungible tokens, all these things that we see in the ecosystem right now. That's the ecosystem right now as it exists today. So when you inform yourself, when you're starting a project, you look at what are other projects doing, and they're all doing it, right? There is no reset. There is no step out and set up systems that have been mathematically proven long-term in governance terms, right? It's very difficult for people, and it's an educational process. So I've been with many DAOs that use the Menagerie logic, and I can tell you from experience, having done this almost 5 years now in practice, it's all about education. It's literally getting people used to this idea of, well, you can't buy the token and you stake it and you have to vote twice on every issue because the first vote doesn't count, and you need to be able to see how everybody else feels before you actually stake your token and potentially lose your token, right? Non-fungible token. So it's literally this requirement of educating people about core system parameters. We call them minimum viable protocol requirements, MVPR. Getting that, I can't. You see how gray I got? For 5 years, right? So the amount of fights, just getting people to this notion of, no, this is a different governance system. There are different requirements. It's all a learning process, right? But this is the same for every technology, right? So when humanity adopted electricity, there were a lot of people who thought that it was somehow dangerous, right? Until they started seeing their neighbors use the electricity and have light bulbs in their windows, right? So, and I think this is very similar, right? So as projects start using long-term and sustainable governance tool sets, that other communities start seeing that, they start seeing the equilibria that come out of these communities and the stability that comes out of this, and the decentralization enhancements that come out of this, and they start dealing with this. And we're already seeing this in Menagerie, but it's a very slow process. This will take a decade, in my opinion, to slowly, incrementally make progress. Now, we have made some very significant progress with, I would call, Silicon Valley royalty, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. So let me talk a little bit about, unless there are more questions, about Menagerie and what we do.
I just want to say I love that point that we are going to get a project together, so we hire our front end developer and our back end developer, and we've got our CEO. We may even hire a marketer. We may even consult with a tokenomics gamification expert, but we rarely look to a governance expert to form the project, even when we're looking at tokenomics. Right, and
exactly. So they think tokenomics is governance. It's not. Right. Tokenomics is a component of governance, but the governance system is at the core. It's not a bug. It's not something you slap on at the end. It runs the entire logic. And how you build tokenomics around it is a separate engagement where you hire the tokenomics expert who may issue some sort of fungible token, but that has nothing to do with how you actually run the system and the community around it, right? And getting that to people and start process that, right? That these are two separate things. It's just a learning process. Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Menagerie quickly. So here's us. We made some really exciting progress, including with Chinwe, who's an old friend of mine who just joined as an advisor. Robert Tursek, Eric Poirier is very prominent with Vadam. And we have a very powerful team that I'm very excited about. Tony Greenberg, my co-founder and president, has 40 years experience with data centers, worked for Goldman Sachs, all the big names, IBM, Microsoft, etc. And I'm very excited to have this team together, we are moving mountains, I believe, together, which is very exciting. So what do? We work with a lot of 501c3s right now. We work with startups, community-based businesses, and we have a lot of different communities in different segments in different industries. We also work with communities that are literally competing with governments. I don't want to say names, but there is some governance, especially in Africa and among others. There is increasing recognition that there are technology-based solutions for community governance that can help upgrade some of these old political structures that don't create the results for people that many people are desiring. and some very successful business people are putting a lot of money behind this, which is great because it ultimately serves the people. And so yeah, so there's different components of clients that we work with, and so the core components of what we bring to the table typically resolves around know-how. This idea, as we touched on, governance and governance setup is different from tokenomics for projects. There are different services, there's different software tool sets associated with, there's different know-how that is associated with the governance components that can then be connected to and work with the tokenomics, right? And but there are different tokens and different accounting systems, right? So governance revolves around non-fungible tokens and should typically revolve around non-fungible tokens, but you can still connect that with fungible governance logic, right? Fungible token logic, right? And so we have developed different templates. We have a grant marketplace for for our clients, in which we are matching clients with grantors. Different brands, different governments that are involved in this. And at the core is the reputation token. Again, I want to emphasize it's a non-fungible token. It's an accounting metric, if you want, right? So we're working with the big accounting firms, including Deloitte, to calibrate this for different clients and different contexts. So we have seen a lot of traction.
I just want to pause for a second there, if I may. That's so interesting. That non-fungible, non-transportable. That's something that we're in SNET quite passionate about. This reputation aspect. We've done a lot of AI work into reputation, having true reputation. The disincentives of Facebook and media being one of the big areas there. We have our own decentralized media platform, Mindplex Magazine, that's working on this AI-based reputation based on actions, quality, expertise, rather than just being gamified. And they actually have this. They have the soul-bound token. We also have a side chain, Hypercycle, we're launching right now. And part of it, it's a kind of an alternative blockchain architecture, a ledger-linked architecture, more peer-to-peer, like you would imagine Napster. But part of it is based on a proof of reputation, not proof of staking, but proof of reputation. And the calculations that you do and the quality of the calculations that you do help verify your node. So bringing this reputation token, non-fungible, non-transferable, and I like what you're saying, pairing this with a fungible token so that you have both people who are economically invested in a project, and then the people who are reputationally invested. They're working towards, they're participating and contributing.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
So you mentioned something that's very important. I took that slide out of the stack, but I want to mention it anyways. Long term, so this whole idea of silos of proof of stake blockchains competing with each other and without having a multi-chain engagement that actually propels the industry forward together, right, and creates these required decentralized infrastructure solutions. Ultimately, once we get to a point of governance and community governance with reputation tokens and reputation engagements and reputation staking engagements, in the long run, once we build on that, and this will take 5 to maybe 10 years until we get there, right? Non-fungible tokens can also then over time become a layer 1 equivalent, right? I want to be really clear. This is not something we do right now, but this is in the long run possible because we collect the data, we run the models, and we can show how reputation with the algorithm that runs reputation allocation, how the long-term sustainable solution, the equilibrium model with reputation governance, can actually over time also be used for block propagation, right? It's a very important long-term objective that comes out of this. Now, all the POS, all the existing systems, very important incremental steps, yeah. But once you upgrade these systems, these existing layer 1s that all experience these governance problems, once you get there and they all start working on this, and you show them that this governance core metric actually has equilibrium model, long-term legs, if you want, that can then over time result in either single-handedly or in a multi-chain environment using reputation staking logic for block propagation, right? That's where I personally see this going right now. Of course, it's people invest in the different silos, and that's part of how the ecosystem is currently, if you want, calibrated. But I think this is long term. I already see the writing on the wall. I think it will go into multi-chain, including reputation block propagation. But okay, let me just talk a little bit about where we're coming from. So we're currently looking at an extension of over 85 years of research that we are using. We have worked with many communities for over almost 5 years now. Total assets under value was about 300 million. Of course, with the current markets, that's a little bit tricky. We create many KPIs to measure this. We have several DAOs that are very successfully launched with our models. We see about 10 million in investment total. We have a growing pipeline, and I'll talk later about some of our clients and how Silicon Valley is slowly waking up to this on multiple levels. So let me talk about one of our key partners, who's Vadim, is a metaverse company that is using Menagerie right now, and I want to give you sort of the vision of where this may go. So at some point in the future, we will have almost every single Web2 flat platform will have some form of a metaverse extension, right? So there may be a button on a Coca-Cola web page that says "Come inside," and then you enter, and we have this on the Menagerie site right now, which is a Vadim metaverse, where you click on the button and it says "Come inside," and then all of a sudden you're in a metaverse environment. Now this may be through optical enhancements, or it may just be by looking at a computer. There's different ways of doing this, but as the metaverse evolves, there are many different. The metaverse really is about communities for us, right? There's individuals in the metaverse, but it's also how people engage with each other, right? And so that's Menagerie in the metaverse through Vadim and other partners. And this is the bottom right, right? So there's this logic of earning rep and creating communities in these metaverse environments, but they are connected to the real world. So there can be points, there can be badges, there are different logic. There's different logic that we can apply here in creating communities in the metaverse. And I already spoke about some of the layer 1 clients. Again, many of them have used hard-coded governance solutions that are almost a decade old, or have been upgraded also with hard-coded solutions. And there's no dynamical elements in that. And they all are typically based on fungible tokens, which creates the whale problem, which creates the issues with tyranny of majority. And so these problems are slowly being addressed through pilot projects, different DAOs on different layer 1s, experiencing with new governance solutions that often come out of Menagerie. And so those are sort of two key components, that's of our work right now. And so I know we're going to run out of time very soon. So let me just go through this quickly. Key components for us at the core is always community as a service, with the respective community as a service license that we're offering to any ecosystem, any client really. There's a grant matchmaking engagement for our clients in different ecosystems, including fiat foundations that are issuing grants in legacy systems. And most of this, of course, starts with consultancy, because, as I said, it's typically the educational component is overpowering for at least 6 months. Typically, it depends a little bit on the system and the client. So those are our sort of key perspectives on this. And so community as a service, we ultimately think that this is leading to forms of reputation economies where different communities engage with each other and this is a sort of horizontal scaling engagement. I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker. The community as a service license that we have is typically revolving around the Menagerie voting engine and the key logic of the algorithms and the reputation NFTs that we're using. And consultancy again is at the heart of this. Grant matching is one of the ways to help our clients get into the ecosystem. So before I wrap up, and I think we have 5 minutes for questions.
We actually don't. We don't have another talk, so you can take a couple minutes, and yes, we're good to go.
Great. Yeah, great. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about where we're at. So I spoke a little bit about VADM. There are different forms of partnerships, and we're evolving these right now across different ecosystems, and including different layer 1 systems. So on the IP side, we have the full DAO platform, the on-chain and off-chain engagements for client, the attack-proof governance. Again, that's where I came from 10 years ago. I wouldn't be in this business if I didn't think about attack systems and long-term equilibrium models. We license the voting engine. We have Reddit-like reputation forums, very important as a pre-screen for communities. The forum is really the heartbeat, if you want, of any community, and the existing forum technologies that we see out there, they don't typically have a reputation accounting system that gives long-term incentives for communities, and that's a real problem, right? So this is one of the key components of what Menagerie is developing and introducing. And as I mentioned, we have the Metaverse integration model. We do believe that the Metaverse will be a long-term staple. And Metaverse really is about communities and incentivized structures for communities in the Metaverse. We also have spent many years on the legal model that I'd be happy to talk about as well. One thing that is really important here is the internal governance is only as good as it is connected to external governance. So the congruence between legal wrapper governance and internal community governance is very, very important, right? So how you connect the internal governance logic and the level of decentralization there with the external legal wrapper governance, right? And how they interact with each other is extremely important. There are still many people out there who believe that code is law and they can run all of this through just code solution. I don't think it's in the long-term interest of our clients to take that risk in this current environment. So we're very happy. Again, we're not providing legal services, but we're very happy to make the introductions to the correct lawyers who can help in this context. Then we have a work to earn model really for communities, where this logic of communities, people joining a community because they have a passion for what the community does, right? That has started 5 years ago with typically developer circles. So code writing and code solutions were key and center. But we see a lot of this moving to many more mainstream examples where people meet and engage with each other in these incentivized systems through repetition staking engagements, right? So community as a service is part of that. We have the incentive design, the catalyst identification is very important. How do you find your catalyst that then propel the community forward is a key component of how communities actually can and have to evolve. And community seeding is part of that. The grant marketplace, I spoke a little bit about that. One of the reasons why we are offering those services is because we often see clients, even clients who are fully funded, wanting to engage in a grant context with different layer 1 solutions. And you also use this as a way to test out solutions, right? So it's not just about funding, it's also about community building with the grantor in some cases. So that's one of the reasons why we're offering this matching service. So traction and partners, we've run DevXDAO, CRDAO for almost 4 years now. CRDAO is a more pure instantiation here. Casper, Polkadot, and several other layer ones are near and dear to our hearts. And we've been working with White & Case, Deloitte, Perkins Coie, and then most importantly, XPRIZE, right? So XPRIZE is really one of our staples right now. We are running a beta for them that will be tested in July. And you may know who's part of XPRIZE. So Elon Musk gave 100 million carbon sequestering prize, funded that with XPRIZE. There's Sergey Brin, Larry Page. There's several very big names associated with this. We are in the fortunate position to be able to present the beta to their leadership boards in a retreat in October. So we're beta testing with them and for them. And we believe that these governance solutions that XPRIZE is using for its communities, and there's carbon sequestering, there's the green oceans, there's so many communities that XPRIZE will be running through this in Menagerie. So it's very exciting to be involved with that. And so with that, let me just talk a little bit about timelines. What we're doing here, we have as I said, the beta testing starts in August, and then we have different. So just to be clear, this is the extended version. So we have many communities that are live already. Some are on databases, some are on chain. But the upgrades in Menagerie 2.0, that's the beta testing we're doing right now, and that's what's all going into XPRIZE, which is very exciting for us. We announced this at World Economic Forum 4 months ago, and so it's on the webpage. With that, I'll end here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Sorry if I went a little bit over time. Thank you.
It was wonderful. Thank you very much for being here to share your expertise and everything that you've learned in building this practice, this platform, and your research and experience, what you've seen in this space. I think it is so important what you were saying, that these new organizations or old organizations that want to decentralize, that we have this expertise in this space to where we can start to trust these new structures and these new opportunities and not fall back on what we know, where corporate backgrounds we may have come from. Even our education systems has very much the centralized component that we get trained into. And it's easy to fall back onto the efficiency or the perceived efficiency and knownness of our current systems. So having this out there, having this expertise, having platforms, having people sharing what they're learning instead of everybody inventing the wheel is so important to growing that level of trust and accelerating the implementation and the growth of these systems. So thank you very much for being here, for helping with our growth. I do want to dive into a couple things. I do want to say, though, this is the last talk in this room. So anybody who isn't looking at your schedule, there are talks starting in track 1 and track 2. Grace Rachmani will be speaking shortly, as well as Chris Baird. You can go to the Decentralization Summit site, you get the schedule, get the links. We have a bunch of great talks going on in there, as well as bringing the community back together to the main room at the end to have kind of a group discussion. But if I may take a little bit more of your time, Wulf, I want to look at, if you can, what do you see as the most important incentives for participation within DAOs to bring community together, a longevity, a community that's going to stay and participate and contribute, that aren't whales, but that are going to come together to form this organization?
Yeah. So look, there's an ideal state, and then there are increments towards the ideal state, right? The ideal state is a very close-knit community of super experts in a given expertise. Yeah, there, for instance, in code, right? There are 10 people around the world who know certain types of code so well that only those 10 people can talk to each other, right? Now imagine, so this is the, if you want, the nucleus of the perfect community, and we're nowhere near there right now, right? But these people are perfectly incentivized to share because they all have the same expertise. They can all provide the same expertise to externals. They're perfectly incentivized to only work with each other and control output for each other and vote with each other on each other's output, that they can actually become a thriving, economically and intellectually thriving community, right? Because why? These 10 people care deeply about what each other knows about this particular part of code, right? Let's say this, and I know some of those communities, right? Where they are completely distributed around the world, right? Japan, China, Shenzhen, New York City, and LA, right? 10 people. And they're the only experts in the world, right? They are the perfect group, if you want, very small, right? The perfect group to use the system because they're the top experts. And they are working with each other to provide services to externals. And they're internally coordinated to work with each other and provide services to other people who need the code or need expertise on the code and are willing to give jobs and fees to this small community of experts, right? Now, having said that, that is the long term. That's how we look at this long term. We look at this as a horizontal scaling engagement, right? So we have a big, diverse community with different kinds of expertise, over time realizing that they want to hire people within their community or external who have a very specific set of knowledge, right? And who are then saying, okay, well, set up by yourself, we want to hire only you guys to do these, to provide these services to us, yeah? And that's what we've been seeing for about 5 years now, right? So it starts with one very big, diverse community, very well funded, that starts realizing, oh, we can vote on this, but we don't really know enough. So we need to hire this new community. And that's the type of horizontal scaling that we're seeing, right? And the more you do this horizontal scaling, so this is not, hey, we want to be the next Facebook and vertically scale communities, right? And make them bigger. This is about, we know we are too diverse to do this job and effectively vote on something because we don't have enough knowledge. So we need to rely on another expertise in another community to provide the expertise to our diverse community, right? That logic of horizontal scaling is what we're seeing, and we're seeing communities seeding other communities, right? So we're seeing this. I've seen this in many clients that start doing something. Now they can all default back to centralized logic, but once they know enough, we shouldn't be hiring the centralized company because we actually don't know if we can trust their output as much as we can trust the community output that comes out of this new community of experts. And that's what we're seeing, right? So yeah, I'll stop here.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Kind of along those lines, SingularityNET is obviously starting from the spot of, we have an organization that's fairly strong. We have a community that's very strong. We have some decentralization efforts. We've got our deep funding, community funded grant program. We've got our ambassador program. That's, kind of a marketing and outreach for SingularityNET. And then of course the main community body itself. What are the distinctions or advantages or disadvantages to an organization like SingularityNET now looking to more widely decentralize versus that decentralization from the beginning, from the start, from the initiation? What are the special challenges or opportunities?
Yeah. So we see a lot of clients with this. So look, if you don't have the tool sets available to set things up in a decentralized way, typically clients default to centralized committee structures. That's a very slippery slope. And here's why. Because once you set it up in a more centralized environment, it's much more difficult to unwind those power centers that you already created, right? Now, having said that, you basically rely on benevolent dictators who literally wean off their power and give it back to the community by seeding the other communities. Now, there are ways to make this a softer approach where they don't have to surrender power immediately. So the way we would look at this is we would say, look, if there's a reputation token allocation that we can give you, that allows you to dominate votes for X amount of time. But as you onboard new people into the community and give them the same reputation token, and you're less engaged, your power wanes over time. And that's really the core logic of dynamic proliferation of decentralization in these systems. And that's the beauty of the engine, if you want, that you can start with a catalyst who would otherwise form a committee top down, and then let this community slowly evolve. We've seen it in the CR DAO, and it evolved quicker than we thought. We thought this would take over a year, and after just 6 months, the founders had to literally say, well, we're going to stop funding this because you guys are already at our level now. We're going to stop, right? Because the community is already self-funded, right? So it's in the initial phases, it requires this recognition. Yes, we are benevolent dictators at the beginning, but we're onboarding and we're willing to onboard new people and share power.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have the Julius Caesar who then never gave up power, right? That never works.
Exactly.
Fortunately for us, while Ben has and the organization in general have a deep passion for SingularityNet and the importance of centralizing AI, he would rather be researching AGI than running a company. So yes, we are quite fortunate there. And
Ben is great. I met him several years ago at World Economic Forum, I think. I would assume that he would have the right inclinations here.
Yes, and then it's a defense mechanism as well. As soon as you have AGI, he doesn't want to be in charge. He very much does not want to be in charge of the platform. It must be community and democratically decentralized, organized. What do you see as the legal future of DAOs? What do you see on the horizon there? I know this is a deep topic, but what do you see?
So there's the philosophy and then there's the reality, right? So let me talk reality, because the philosophy only takes us so far, right? So the reality is that in certain legal wrapper jurisdictions, we will need a recognition in a form of precedent, meaning a judge deciding that a given legal wrapper is not circumvented and is in effect a legal wrapper that represents the given community. I have not seen that in any jurisdiction at this point. We are literally pushing for that in Switzerland right now. We don't know if we'll get it this year, but it has to be a recognition that the community and the community governing the legal wrapper representation in that jurisdiction is a valid model. We don't have that right now. It leads to some insecurities. Having said that, many clients run that model in these offshore jurisdictions. Ideally, we would get it in the United States. I'm not somebody who's currently very confident in the different forms of experimentation in the United States, be it Wyoming or co-ops in Pennsylvania or Washington State. I'm not confident right now that these solutions will give us the long-term trajectory that we need in law for decentralized autonomous communities in the United States. But in offshore jurisdictions, I'm confident that these legal shields are effective, and they've proven effective in many cases. And once we get an offshore jurisdiction recognizing a legal DAO wrapper, and in the context of a partnership claim, right? So this is always the threat, right? The respective DAO will be deemed a partnership with joint and several liability for all the people in the DAO, which means the legal wrapper was superfluous, didn't exist, and then everybody is on the hook with liability. So we haven't seen that. We have several. A month ago, there was another decision in the United States, I forget the name, where they exactly came out that way and said, no, it is a partnership, right? And so with that said, I would advise anybody, I'm not giving legal advice, but in the United States, it's right now not at the status of legal protection the way we would like it to be.
What do you think will be the requirements to get such a judgment? What do you think a DAO will need to demonstrate or be to make that happen?
Look.
Or if it's not your area, that's fine.
Wyoming, when Wyoming passed that DAO law, there's some evidence that it's not evidence, but there's some suggestions that literally the people who passed that law were gunning for a fight with the federal government. Okay. So, and until that fight is fought in the courts, why would you expose yourself to that, right? Now, there's different people pitching this a different way, right? And I'm not going to name names here, but yeah, for now, why take the risk? I don't see it. Yeah.
So I want to go back just a little bit. You were saying that one of the big passions for you that brought you to the decentralization space, it sounded like, was addressing security risks, attack resistant systems. Can you talk more to how that brought you to decentralization and what that means to you in the DAO structure?
Look, I love all the projects that are currently out there experimenting. Okay, I want to start with that. But if you are experimenting with systems that follow 30-year-old logic of web of trust experimentation, there's thousands, right? I love everything they do because it's a necessary increment and it's necessary experimentation. But if you are exposed to that and your system scales, I wouldn't want to be a founder. Yeah. So with that, 10 years ago, Craig Alcantara and I sat down and we were ready to drop it as soon as somebody said, hey, I found a way to Sybil attack your system, right? And nobody has up to this day. So I'm pretty confident that that this system is something that is workable and that it's worth working on and experimenting with because it is attack resistant, or at least it is more attack resistant than anything else that I've seen and experienced so far. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then just to wrap up a little bit, we are an AI organization, and we're always looking for like with the reputation, how can we do implement systems for scalability and efficiency and communication with AI that help foster some of these decentralization and these ideals. Have you seen what do you see as possibilities and potentials for AI in the decentralization space, and have you seen examples of that?
Super important. I'm a firm believer in AI becoming an integral part of human-based decentralized autonomous organization proliferation. It's absolutely in a sense. So there's a lot of people who are talking about all the threats. I see AI as a key component for proliferation, as a key helper including for attack resistant analysis, right? So if you're setting up your system in a way where you didn't follow best practices, but you're experimenting, or there were political compromises you made, AI should always run in the background and run a risk profile analysis, right? And attack system analysis. All these systems, they all need it. As a matter of fact, I'm a huge proponent. I mean, 10 years ago, we had the first AI who became part of a board or had a board seat and advising, right? This is as these decentralized community systems proliferate, AI is absolutely essential in helping upgrade these systems and make them run efficiently, including with proposals for the community, making vote recommendations, voting on it. All of these things have to happen, and the system cannot proliferate without AI.
Yeah. I'm always so fascinated by the ways that both blockchain and AI have this amazing synergy and shared way of both opening opportunities on a global level and at a very micro level as well. So blockchain has the opportunity to globalize projects. We can all collaborate across the planet to work on these amazing decentralized organizations, and AI as well, enables that collaboration and opportunities to work together on a global scale. And then at the micro level, enabling the service economy, this gig economy, and hyper localization and decentralization in that way, not reliant on the central statewide or citywide services for car sharing. You can have a little group or work directly with individuals. It's so interesting how both of these technologies are so key to both that on both scales, opening opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was great. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. And if I can answer any questions, people can always ping me on the social media stuff as desirable.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciate your expertise. And we look to seeing and talking with you more as we move into this space.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.